As the Clone Wars broke out across the galaxy, and the Jedi were forced to take up combat roles as generals leading clone troopers, many of the Jedi looked down upon their men and had little respect for them. Obi-Wan Kenobi, along with a few others however, were notable exceptions to this, showing tremendous respect to his troopers and forming strong bonds with them, despite them being bred for war. So let's break down the heartwarming reason that Obi-Wan Kenobi chose to wear clone trooper armor during battle, despite not needing it. So the first major reason is pretty obvious, and that was for defensive purposes. As you can imagine, the standard Jedi robes provided at the temple on Coruscant are going to do anything against the rapid blaster bolts coming from battle droids. Obi-Wan, unlike many younger Jedi, understood that although he was a proficient defensive Jedi, and that he was most likely able to defend himself from anything that came his way with just his saber and the Force, he never got too confident or complacent. Obi-Wan Kenobi was an absolute master at Form 3 lightsaber combat known as Sorosu, which relied heavily on defensive movements and had the aim of essentially outlasting an opponent, waiting until they made mistakes, which was quite quickly for most battle droid models. Because the technique utilized tight moves, subtle dodges, and efficient parries, it quickly became the most defensive of the main lightsaber forms recognized by the Jedi Council. Although Obi-Wan absolutely perfected this highly defensive lightsaber form, he never forgot his Jedi teachings and did not get too confident in his abilities. He knew he wasn't invincible and that one momentary lapse in judgment could kill him, therefore he took extra precautions like wearing clone trooper armor alongside his Jedi attire. He was definitely one of the smarter ones. Furthermore, he knew that once the Clone Wars started and he had seen with his own eyes the first waves of battle droids land on contested worlds, that he was going to be facing such a huge amount of blaster bolts that it would be stupid of him to think that he was not going to be hit. Even believing that it would be arrogant and prideful for him to think that way, something which he knew went against his Jedi beliefs. So in other words, Obi-Wan was just incredibly humble about his ability, knowing that although he would probably be okay, he was not the one to take any risks. Now following that, we have the really heartwarming part of why he incorporated clone trooper armor into his Jedi attire, which is that he wanted to show solidarity with his clone troopers. While many clone troopers were forced to report to horrendous leaders like Pong Krell or the plain hateful Quinlan Vos, Kenobi did not want his men to face that disrespect. He did everything he could to make his troopers feel welcomed under his command, and that included wearing a piece of their armor to symbolize his friendship with them in battle. This act helped in forging a deep bond with Commander Cody and the rest of his men, which carried him through even the toughest of battles in the most harsh of environments. The act of wearing some sort of armor, even if it wasn't clone trooper armor, started spreading among the ranks of the Jedi generals, and many Jedi who genuinely did love their clone troopers began to wear it just to help them remain grounded and relatable to their men. Some who you wouldn't even expect to joined the trend, like Mace Windu and Kit Fisto. Honestly, with the amount of confidence Mace Windu had, I'm surprised he even chose to wear armor at all. As you can probably imagine, this little act of symbolism and friendship meant the absolute world to the clone troopers of the 212th and heavily boosted their morale in combat. Wearing the armor of the clones even helped to make Kenobi more likable among the men, as they could relate to him just that little bit more. And you have to remember that most clones would have found it very difficult to relate and to serve under a literal wizard with mystical powers who can lift huge objects from a distance. So wearing their armor brought him closer and made the idea of serving under a wizard much easier. Additionally, most clone troopers of the Republic believed that they were just disposable cannon fodder and droid bait who were specifically bred for the war. They knew that their sole purpose in life was to train, fight the Separatists, and then to die for the Republic. Obi-Wan, however, did as much as he could to change this notion among the clones and make sure they knew that this was not true. Despite the fact that they literally were bred for the purpose of fighting in the war, he made them realize that they were individuals also, with some prospect of living a life after the conflict had come to an end. Much the same way that Yoda and Plo Koon did to the men serving under them. Now on top of this, Obi-Wan's act of wearing the clone armor helped to instill a feeling in the clone troopers that he was willing to give his life to protect them in battle. They believed that if he was willing to wear their armor, he was willing to protect them at all costs when worst came to worst in the heat of battle. Moving on from that, this next part wasn't his full intention, but the clones likely viewed Obi-Wan wearing the armor and getting down in the trenches with them as a bit of a potshot against the pompous, disrespectful, and arrogant Jedi Masters like Pong Krell and Quinlan Vos. If you've read any of the comics immediately post Order 66 on Kashyyyk, you'll know just how hated Quinlan Vos was by his clones, and especially by his clone commander, who actually enjoyed trying to blow Quinlan's brains out during Order 66. This came as a result of Quinlan continuously berating his troopers and belittling them throughout the war, making Order 66 very easy to execute on him. If you want to see the story about how Commander Faye, Quinlan's commander during the war, was happy to execute him, you can check out the pinned comment after the video for the full story about that. And it's really one you shouldn't miss. Palpatine definitely didn't need the inhibitor chips on Quinlan's troopers. And I don't even have to get started on Pong Krell, because I'm sure you know just how badly he treated his clones, having the highest casualty rate of any Jedi general, and just generally using his troopers as chess pieces rather than individual lives. Now, because of generals like this, and the fact that not a whole lot of them wore the armor, it was seen as a huge deal by the clones. If their leader was willing to go against the grain of their religious order in order to support his men, why wouldn't they want to fight alongside him on the battlefield? Obi-Wan understood this fundamentally and knew that it would produce better morale and results on the battlefield. He truly was a remarkable Jedi Knight and an incredible general during the war. Really does make the final encounter between Obi-Wan and Commander Cody on Utapau just that much sadder. On top of all of this, Obi-Wan wanted to wear the armor to show his men that they were all one unit. No matter the difference in rank, difference in training, or different beliefs, he and his men all stood on the same level ground, that being the high ground. But no, they were all fighting for the one cause, which was of course the Republic, and they would do whatever it took to protect that Republic from the onslaught of the Separatist army across the galaxy. Now, towards the end of the war, a very unfortunate thing happened, which pretty much stopped Obi-Wan from being able to wear clone armor as much as he wanted to. Things began to change after the Jedi Council soft-banned Jedi generals from wearing clone armor in almost every situation, because they were beginning to get very worried that the public's perception of the Jedi Order was beginning to change, and not in a good way. The Council was deeply afraid that the regular citizens of the Republic were starting to view the Jedi more as warriors and soldiers of the war, and forgetting that their primary focus was to be peacekeepers and diplomats out there to solve disputes. And to be quite honest, the public were pretty much right about this, all thanks to Palpatine's grand plan. One of the major parts of Palpatine's grand plan was to shift the public's perception of the Jedi to be brutal soldiers, preparing them for the events of Order 66 to justify it in their minds. There's no way he could have killed the entire Jedi Order, which had protected and kept peace in the Republic for many years, without first discrediting them and distancing them from the regular people of Coruscant, Corellia, and everywhere else. No question about it, Palpatine did a ridiculously good job of discrediting the Jedi and their supposed morals by making them fight in a war. So after this soft ban came into place, the Council pretty much made the generals of the Republic wear their traditional Jedi robes again, in hopes of reminding the public that they were still peacekeepers and not just brutal soldiers. As you probably know, this didn't really work at all, as a lot of the general public did believe that the Jedi committed treason against Palpatine by trying to kill him without a trial, and they were technically correct, because it wasn't illegal to be a Sith Lord, it was simply a religious dispute and against their Jedi morals. But that's definitely a story for another video. But let me know down below if you agree with the Council's reasoning for stopping the use of clone armor, trying to save their image. Do you think they were wise to do this when it could have potentially endangered their Jedi generals, and probably even lowered morale amongst the clone troopers? Let me know below. So that is the full story of why Obi-Wan Kenobi chose to wear clone trooper armor during the Clone Wars, to support his men and prove to them that he was just like them, fighting side by side almost as brothers. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more awesome Star Wars content just like this, make sure you subscribe and like the video, and let me know down below what you'd like to see next. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.